Okay, here we go. Welcome back to Lit Friday, Augustonians. Autumn is upon us, and I know some of us prefer hot weather, but we all need a break from this heat. If you are new to Lit Friday, my name is Jessica Lanay, Literary Curator at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center. Lit Friday is a monthly digital program where I curate and host writers, thinkers, and artists of the African diaspora. But before we introduce our extremely honored guest, Brad Walrond, for the evening, let's synchronize our calendars. Our submission window for the Black Bottom Film Festival is still open. The deadline is February 16th, 2024. Visit us online for the details. From September 14th to the 17th, we have our annual International Jazz Festival, world-renowned. It's not to be missed. Get your tickets. And then also get your tickets for the September 15th Taste of Jazz Bar Party. That is to celebrate the festival itself. We're going to keep you busy. September 21st, our event, Intermission, the Artful Happy Hour series, is happening. Also register online. And on September 29th, we will be hosting Roger Reeves for Lit Friday. September 29th to October 1st, in partnership with Pittsburgh Ballet Theater and Hazelwood Local, we have Open Air, a series and celebration of performing arts. But tonight, we are honored and thrilled to welcome poet, author, filmmaker, mixed media conceptual performance artist, and activist, Brad Walrond. Brad's poetics, performance, and multidisciplinary work interpolates between virtual reality, identity formation, and human consciousness at the intersection of race, gender, sex, and desire. By amplifying and interrogating the great power and contradictions inherent to identity, Brad aims with his work to provoke futurist explorations of how we co-create historical, remembered, and imagined time. The urgency that suffuses Brad's work the energy that suffuses Brad's work interrogates the great power and contradictions inherent to identity and asks how we can cultivate habitable futures worthy of the common and conflicting threads of our human inheritance. Walrond's forthcoming debut collection, which we're discussing tonight, Everywhere Alien, on More Black Press, an imprint of HarperCollins, locates the author's own Black queer exploration of the world and how these experiences map onto the discovery of co-occurring and overlapping art and resistance movements among New York City's underground communities. Communities like the New Black Arts Movement, the New York ballroom scene, Black Rock Coalition, underground house, dance, and music community, and the Black queer political arts and activist movements that are native to Brooklyn, New York, and currently resides in the Bronx. Brad began writing and performing at the age of 24 when commissioned to participate in a theater production curated by Harry Belafonte. One of my questions is about that story. And Brad soon became one of the foremost writers and performers of the 1990s Black arts movement centered in New York City. Brad's poetics and praxis have taken him across the country as far as Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Taipei, Taiwan. Welcome, Brad. We cannot wait to hear you read from Everywhere Alien, and we appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm honored to be here in conversation with you. I'll start reading. I'll read a few things, and then we'll just
jump right in. I'm going to go away so everyone can focus on you.
Yes. The Indigenous. Balls deep in the Flatbush extension, we was born again inside a Jacob Lawrence painting, north of the Mason-Dixon line. Jan Rodriguez, the Dominican love child of a Portuguese sailor and an African woman, is the first verifiable non-Indian to take up residence on Manhattan Isle. Somehow no word obtains for a world of melanin-scarred babies conceived at the back door of consent. Who then are the natives? The ones who give the burros its staples, the Lenape who slash and burn, the ones they slashed and burned, whose offerings we remember, their sacrifice wont to forget. Cushaw squash, rabbit, beaver, prickly pear, popped amaranth, episodial, smoked cottonwood leaf quail, yucca fruit, bitter acorn, blue corn and bare root, Domino's sugar, Greg Tate, Junior's cheesecake, Ray's famous pizza, roti, Juve, and the Puerto Rican Day Parade, Maduro's, Black Rock Coalition, matzo ball, pastrami, and hot corn soup. Sweet Mother of God, Madonna does not know how to vogue. Sun sidewalks, echolocate, eggshell, Adidas, and beatbox cheekbones, Wu-Tang, Living Color, Tamara, Sandra St. Victor, Sophia Ramos, The Family Stand, Patti Smith, Biggie Smalls, Soul, Sonic Force, Tables Turn, Whip, R&B, ABBA, Afrobeat, and the conga into stiff peaks, dub beats break rock in a paradise garage, Larry Levan's dance floor, raps concrete round its rhythm, iron horses teeter, totter, and screech with high gloss, hormones and heat, post-pubescent, seesaw, quick witch traps, rough landings, ambition correlate with rent parties, slow many run, the Wall Street laundromat, pockets pick, the hard-won grit oiled into afros, red-lit inflated egos of would-be matadors. The ear down here is a freestyle cipher streaming lyrics onto the droplets of mothers' dreams. The 3 train is a river, run free in Brooklyn, fed every day by the blood of living and dead God's daughters and sons, dreams wet with want, perish the future every day. I'm going to read the eponymous poem, Everywhere Alien, and then I'll finish with a poem called Amphibia, which is lifting up Breonna Taylor. I am unabridged. Walk over me at your peril. Your fix broke free. I'm an infinity imbibing time, an ancestor's scribe born without papers, aroused and wet. Whose liquidity am I? I am absolved of gender at orgasm. I engender billions of beings. iClouds are not safe deposit boxes. Google won't have me found. No cookies bear my namesake. No cookies bear my namesake. Nations stymie with a kiss. An empire's progeny infuse the pan sauces that survive. I am the black, called the kettle, just to say I love you and I think you're hot. How high is Colorado really? If they've only now discovered pot is the alchemy of the gods. Porridge is not a medicine, it is simply good for you. I is a divine prototype come up out of Africa. Consciousness is God's multiple personality disorder. We believe belief belies an antonym in lived language. The absence of belief comprises death, bereaved of its metaphysical powers, dead. As in the end of dying, metaphor is magic. Insists illusions beget quantum mechanics. Even now, follow me yet. I have already been all the things I wished I had never been. This, the very definition of ambition, to make yourself a movement. Sans the desire, time is a stretched out, flaccid thing. Drama is aboriginally human. Desire matters, our universe. At our absolute best, we are all self-starters, self-inflicted victims of arson. Watch us burn, baby. We are flaming flames, unflappable as the wind. The wind is a pusher, man. Top and bottom are equivalent dimensions. All equilibriums spell boring over and over again. Yes, we are nomad. And normal absence, our universe thick with desire, replete with the darkest matter. We are everywhere alien, except in our own skin. And one more. It's coming. I put a spell on you. This grooved soprano, a saline well. The ghost sanctify in sackcloth and ash, patient as dolls, swaying in cipher, holding court, holding breath, waiting for the services to begin. The water is always troubled here. Somebody always falling in something wet, swole, brown, tilled, must encourage the bodies through to the other side. Amphibia is the only precondition answered in Black prayer. I put a spell on you. There is a bayou swum in broken bones. This kind of snatching only returns bloated things. It is not that we are well. Rather, we've found a way to nurse the only water source in the whale of the unpronounced. History, half erect inside these walls, swells into an abstract, grabs at the throat, any throat it can find, a shrill anoints at the half measure, curdles at half control, psalm all shook, wild as the beginnings of anything formed of too many worlds. Whatever it is, it won't let me hold my peace. It has already survived the demise, the burden, the betrayal, the selling away of all one's beloved. I put a spell on you. Whatever it is, it won't let me. All other life still yet spawn from here. That put pitch, that soot, that ink, that blues, that din, that dust, that sink, that brood is that which had no way to be enough. And to is that which could not have ever been enough, is that which would require all surrender of need, to scout out that which might could hold the prophet inside the promise of more than enough, that terra firma, that counter tenor, that which, whatever it is, must needs be all there ever was, all there ever must, will ever be the trouble. Here, in the absence of all else, planets drown, the undead float inside the terrors of a whole world. Breonna Taylor died again today, slipping through our arms. She's mine, she's mine, she's mine. I put a spell on you. A cry for one mortal cannot sound like this. This sound, the stretch of it, strains into the fissure at the river's edge. This half soprano, half railroad, half voice over, half afterbirth must be the last early warning siren.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And that poem really, really touched me, not only because it's about Breonna Taylor, but it's the admiration for Alice Smith's vocal explorations. I've had the opportunity to see her live, and the force of her voice will plaster you against the wall when she's singing live. What made you bring these two women together for this particular tribute?
I was part of a program. This was during COVID. I think it was the third biennial in Harlem. There's another part to that. It's a particular museum that's run out of Columbia University, and they had a Harlem Renaissance triennial. So I was part of that program, and we were asked to look at some of the works and then basically write to them. And so I chose, that was my first exposure to her. And so it's a short film called Black Betty that's in response to. So, and maybe it's literally what you just described about her voice, you know, and doing that in the moment where the Breonna Taylor verdict came in. I think it's that all the grief, the travail, the history, the survival, the resilience that is inside that voice, I think made me pair that with the transcendent impact of what we're facing in real time and who Breonna Taylor has to be.
There's also a vocal range. I mean, not only in your singing, right? That kind of matches the depth, right? It's kind of like the alto two, that difficult space that Alice Smith blows apart and Nina Simone blows apart. It's a part of your voice as well. But there's an oral world in Everywhere Alien. Nina Simone appears, Alice Smith appears. Music is everywhere. And I wonder how you experienced tying your own poetic sense of word choice and your stacking and lining of words with attention to that oral world, this mixture of talking blues and like improvised Black women's jazz.
The idea behind the books is centering my lived experience. So coming to poetry literally in the space at the Sunday Tea Party, which was one of the two significant venues in Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Moon was across the street. The Sunday Tea Party was open mic and then house music afterward. And so just falling into that space, I'm literally inside, obviously, the poetry and learning my voice and, becoming a poet in that realm, happened. But simultaneously, I'm literally inheriting like the cultural river of underground house communities, the Black Rock Coalition. And so for me, they're not really separable, the word, the page, the music, and then learning about oneself and the world through a lived soundtrack. There's so much annals of data that you collect inside you that literally they're not possible in any other way. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really go to the book and read everything and then think that you know what this is. You know what I mean? So I think that these things are not separable to me. So.
No, I was in New York recently, and as soon as I got off the plane, I think I heard Juicy in the airport in LaGuardia. I heard Juicy when I was trapped in traffic and the windows were rolled down in the Uber. I heard Juicy when I was on the train because someone didn't have their headphones plugged in. And I was talking to my friend and I was like, I keep hearing the song. And she said, Biggie is summer. Summer is coming. And it kind of reoriented me because I remember my experience living there, and you're right, like Biggie is summer, right? Like Jay-Z is winter. There's this kind of quality of like the invocation of like a season, even in the hip hop, that's kind of stage setting in your own restructuring of the world that you're talking about. And as a writer, it takes quite a bit of effort to deconstruct your memory, your autobiographical memory into atoms, right? Literally like atomic parts, and then reconstruct it in this kind of artistic form. And I'm wondering about the emotional quality of the task that you put yourself to here.
It is all openness, I will say. I had to be in an extendedly vulnerable place for an extended amount of time to do this work. Tapping into all the things that are coming to you and coming through you. And, I remember there was, I forget which piece that I was working with, but I felt a spiritual danger, a risk, and my partner had been ordained as a priest. And I remember going to him and saying, okay, I'm about to go into realms that I don't know, and I just need to feel like I have a covering. But like that's what it takes.
Your sound went out, Brad. There you go. You're going in. Technical difficulties, everyone. Bear with us. We're having technical difficulties, everybody. 1 second while we sort it out. So I do have a poem that I was going to ask Brad to read if he did not read it, and it's called Cyborg Heaven. It's a few pages long. You back, Brad? So while we're sorting things out, I think Brad may try to make a poem. Let's see. Brad?
Yes.
Yes, now. Eshu's busy.
I can't see you, so I don't know where you are.
I'm here. We can hear you. I can hear you and see you though.
Okay, so we'll just go with that.
All right. Do you remember where we were? I'm so glad you're back. I was getting ready to read Cyborg Heaven, but I'm gonna let Brad read it a little bit later on when I make my special request. But one story I do want to hear is the story about Harry Belafonte inviting you at 24 to work on this production. That's a miraculous event. It's in your bio, and it's definitely like a life mile marker. That's wonderful.
So it's literally how I started writing. So I was I was a minister. No, I wasn't the minister. I was a youth minister at a church in Brooklyn, Southern Baptist Church. And those are many worlds ago, but I went to Bible school, and then I found this church and became a part of it. And along the way, the musical director, Harry Belafonte's musical director, when he would go on tour, became our minister of music. So wow. He and I would literally have so much time after church talking about ministry, art, you know, all these things. And so the pastor had a vision for it must have been a month-long revival in a sense, but culminating in a cultural program. So I'm in the car after church one day with the minister of music, and he's like, okay, we're doing this full production. People are singing, right, doing, you know, theatrical stuff, whatever. I was like, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I know you're gonna do something. And so Harry Belafonte emceed the entire event, and my first poem, which is one of the poems that I was kind of known for when I did shortly thereafter encounter the poetry scene, it's called Epic. So it's just tracing it's tracing the transatlantic slave trade, Black music. So that poem is one of the first ones that I was performing when I came on the scene. So that was literally, though, long before I even knew of spoken word or poetry or whatever. I'm creating in the winds of Harry Belafonte in church.
In the winds of Harry Belafonte's demands, you are creating on the fly. I love it. But there is something you say here, the word epic, right? And there's a quality of Everywhere Alien that does read to me like epic poetry, less narrative, but in the terms of the lyricism and the reappearance of characters, individuals that are braided into your life's weaving that keep appearing as you go throughout the experiences you've written about. And there's a long historic view. Even when you read Indigenous, there's this incredibly long historic view where you start at the beginning, right? Almost pre-colonization. And then from there, you kind of, it's like a fractal flourish into your presence in this kind of stream of history. And I want to know possibly where you are able to get this long historic view from that you're able to place so clearly into the forms you choose. But then also, I'm interested in knowing how you stay focused.
Focused on what?
Focused on all of the different parts that you're, because it's almost as if you're at a loom, right? You're braiding in these very fine threads, then you're locking them, and then you braid in more fine threads, and then you lock them. It's like this way of you getting as many colors in as possible. And I would imagine that staying focused and not going off on a tangent may be difficult at times when you're in the midst of editing, writing.
Okay, I don't know if I can answer any one of those two questions, but I'm going to try. So I think what's coming to me is the word inheritance, which I think is maybe two words: inheritance and ministry. Like just me, like the whole prophetic tradition, that's part of my entree to words, to language, you know. And so that always lives with me. And then having a call to the ministry as a young person and, you know, pursuing to that to some degree, like that's what I carry forward when I came to my art. You know, so, you know, we look at the sacred traditions and all of what that means as a Black body. And then we encounter house music, right? Which to me almost is like the spiritual erotic analog to gospel music, you know. But then you're literally being read into through your body a whole history. You know, so many of the things that I touched, felt, experienced, it wasn't until later on that you really start encountering the real layers of what's the lineage here, what's the, you know, what's the world, the epistemology here, you know. So I think that's something that I'm always doing. And that's what drives my work. You know, we were talking earlier before, like watching a poem become itself.
Yes.
You know, that's when you stay open for it. You know, no, I didn't intend to put this here, but the linkages that the poem itself was revealed, calling you toward, gotta go there. I think what keeps me focused is I do feel like I need my work to be legible. I don't want it to be so abstract or so ethereal that you don't know what I'm talking about. And of course, there's moments with that in any work, but I think because I am foraging through so much, I'm not resting until I'm carrying a cord forward that I feel can be understood.
It's kind of this very specific space between, you know, Gertrude Stein and Ishmael Reed. Like it's like if you're in a Gertrude moment where it's all parantaxis and just juxtaposition that creates the context and the definition for the word in that moment, then you have this ability to talk long in your work and in various voices as well, like Ishmael Reed. So maybe not a space between, but like an overlapping. And this brings me to ask, who was Brad before the age of 24 artistically?
Brad was a church child. You know, gospel music was my threshing floor. You know, it's interesting, like how transcendent, obviously, I think gospel music is, but how intelligent it is.
Yes.
You know, so like when you're hearing and learning voices and forms of expression, and they literally carry the range of human emotion. So I think there's a way in which I, you know, took in my musical world and extended, of course, through R&B and pop music, that perhaps was the formative creative self of Brad Walrond. There was this big interdenominational church in Long Island that I would go to, and the music was amazing. And they had an annual cantata, and there was a piece, I forget the person's name, but he was reading it, theatrically. And I learned that piece, and then people would ask me to perform it a lot. So I remember being with my younger sister in Florida for a while, and while I was writing Everywhere Alien, and I was talking about channeling and da-da-da, and she's like, you act like this is, Brad, that's what you've always been doing. And it's just like, there's ways in you that you can't fully imagine who you are and what you're doing unless someone kind of reflects it back to you to help you connect. Like,
yeah. And that's one of the worst parts of gatekeeping when you're an artist. It's people refusing to reflect you back to you. So you're always uncertain of what you're doing. So you can't mobilize it at your own will, right?
Yes.
It's a very important space that you're talking about, having that intimate feedback within a trusting kind of environment. And the idea that you had that before 24 is rich, right? Because I think during those ages, we're all kind of struggling to be like, are you going to reflect me? Are you my friend? But I also think about the quality of collage, mosaic. I kept using the word atoms, like to atomize something, like to blow everything apart to make it clearer, like reflections across confetti is what Everywhere Alien feels like. And it makes it clearer somehow. And I want to know what your writing process is like. What steps do you go through when the poem touches down? Do you keep your writing desk a certain way? Do you have a certain process that you go through? Just very like the mechanical description of what it's like when you have incoming.
So there is no ritual. And I think for me, it has to be anywhere. So before I came back to my creative work, I had no social media presence whatsoever. Mm-hmm. To the point where it would, except maybe a Facebook page, but then it would literally stress me out on my birthday when all of a sudden you get these flood of messages. It was like, it's like, am I supposed to respond to every, but it wasn't until it's like, okay, I'm going to be creating again. I'm opening myself back to my creative universe. So this is what you do now. You go online. So it was very instrumental. But Instagram became an archive of all the incomings. Like it might be a map for, like when I was speaking before about being vulnerable for an extended period of time, that's every day, all the time. And, pushing those pieces out, and, so then, I started writing some work, but then I would go back through and then grab things and then start letting them become who they are, So I think it is that kind of openness and spontaneity mm-hmm. that, made this work possible. And the time travel piece, which is like an epic poem linking, the kernel of it is looking at the Mike Brown verdict. Mm-hmm. And them coming to read and saying that, they're going to be given the verdict, and then it's getting later and later into the night. And you're looking at them like, don't you know that? I mean, it's 2000. Don't you think we see what, what I'm saying? So, that taking it back to a slave ship and where, below deck, hearing them talk, that's kind of what came through. But the seed of that long poem came out in 2 days.
Wow.
Now it's 2 days, right? And it's years literally of mining, reworking, but So, but I do say that you begin to learn the levels at which you're creating, and that it's all not the same level, and some things literally are downloaded to you. And I always say, for me, that is what keeps humility close.
The book also reminds me of George C. Wolfe's The Colored Museum, especially the time travel poem, in terms of beginning with a craft that's either the slave ship itself or becomes the metaphor for it, because that play opens on a plane with a stewardess who's literally flying over people, and then there's turbulence, and then from then on you have all of these stories that emerge from this moment that happen in this Bermuda Triangle that they're going through, and then you end up on the other side in a different epistemology. And for me, when I think of like Blackness and what Blackness does, I think of epistemological exploration, right? Throughout all of our history, we've always been extremely philosophical, which is why it's become our task in the United States as poets, theorists, to kind of break it down and be like, no, I know exactly how this was built, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what it is. So I'm wondering how because you also mentioned Jose Esteban Munoz, a Cuban performance theorist and queer of color critique theorist. And I would like to know how this idea of an epistemology or the theoretical appears in the structure of your poetry.
Yeah. Your questions are literally life-giving.
I want to know
for how provoking and confounding they are. That's what makes them amazing.
Because this is Black feminist theory, right? It's in the poem. The way I write the poem is the lived epistemology. The way the poem is written is the theory. What's the theory, Brad, in your writing and Everywhere Alien?
Time is a strange simultaneity. All of it is always present with us, and I think that's maybe my approach to language. It's like, what is here? How did it get here? What does it point us toward? And to your point, I think down to a word or two words together, like how they can literally invoke 5 worlds. So I think that is never not with me when I'm writing. I think that's the best way that I can answer.
So you address this when you give your notes about your poems, and you talk about your playfulness with contrapuntality. And it's one of my favorite parts. It's the play and the alignment, sometimes in triplicate, and then the play across and within. And when you read straight across in the prosaic form. And so I want to know about form, especially your play with this. And after that, I'm wondering if it's possible for you to find one of those sections and read it for us again outside of the prosaic.
Okay. Yes. So to me, I'm sure that in my formative years, form was not a part of my creative life, period, right? But what I have discovered is that form teaches you parts of your voice that you do not know exist. Whatever that constraint is, it pushes language that would not be made manifest otherwise. And then you discover the beauty there, the power there, you know. And so that's, and at the same time, I think it doesn't follow anything different than what I'm doing with respect to letting the poem become itself. You know, so if I'm doing that with every poem, it's not that I go to write this contributor poem, you know, it's this language, this content is asking something different. How do I get to it? Yeah.
No, your exercise, I had such a great time reading Everywhere Alien that I even started thinking of like poetic forms as epistemology, right? Like what would be the contemporary American epistemology? It would be like a Plutarchian sonnet, like very, you know, like very ordered and restrictive, but if you learn it well enough and you know your slant rhymes and you learn your voice against it, you can slip it, right? And I'm sorry, I asked these questions because I just had the best time. But there's also this combination in Everywhere Alien of refusal and joy together. Refusal as a resistance through looking at the violences in this bold-faced way, despite fear, despite exhaustion. But also there's this joy that's found in community. I'm thinking right now of the poem where the speaker is at a ballroom performance and can feel their mother in the ecstasy and the euphoria of the experience, and how embattled these communities can be based on what's happening politically at the moment, but what they give in terms of a fullness of an array of human emotions and experience. And I wanted to hear you say more about the place of joy and refusal in your book.
I'm matching the question with the context that you and what it brings up for me is this is again, I think it's, if it's not before I was definitely writing, it was very close to it. But Donald Woods, who was a seminal creative and activist person, artist, writer, activist, creative person during the HIV/AIDS pandemic and died of AIDS. He was my mom's best friend's son. My his mother is my younger sister's godmother. And so I was privy then to backstage to some degree when he died and his funeral. Many years later, I think it's Thomas Glove, is that his name? Could be, but someone wrote an account of that funeral and of Oselda Saint, who was also a queer, seminal, creative and activist in that movement. He stood up at the funeral, and which was anonymizing Donald's queer identity and his dying of AIDS. And he stood up and interrupted the funeral and said, as long as I've known Donald, I have known him to be a proud Black gay man, and he was living with AIDS. And I think it is, so maybe right there, right, is a recipe for how I live through language. Because how much of the future was in that present that I wouldn't understand or know till later? And how much of the past had to be seeded in order for me to even truly contextualize it? But that to be pressed so close against death. That is Blackness. We had to survive it. And so I think calling forward for, even in the most abject horror, the cord, the string that you can reach toward, to hold on to tell some portion of your understanding, to hold some portion of the grief and pain, but also insist that now matters. Living life has to be something. And maybe that's the joy that comes together, that there's an insistence that the facts matter, but the facts cannot control the architecture of my humanity. Mm-hmm. They cannot dictate the terms. Yeah.
And then there too, just like there's this rubbing of refusal and joy, there's also this rubbing between grief, sensuality, and sexuality. And throughout Everywhere Alien, they seem to invoke each other almost like in a breath. And I want to know more about that breath and that exchange, that triangle, that space that's shared when you have the circle of grief overlapping the circle of sexuality, overlapping the circle of sensuality.
So one could make the argument that I always knew I was not only straight. I'll say it like that. But I didn't begin coming out until I was in the middle of my creative life inside the New Black Arts Movement. You know, and that journey had so many layers. But in this work, you know, when I speak about these movements, so it's just like I'm part of the New Blacks movement, so I'm onboarding my contemporaries, Jessica, Mose, Saul, Michael Ad, you know what I'm saying, everybody. And the hip hop and the Black Rock Coalition, the avant-garde, you know, I'm onboarding all these things. I'm becoming part of a house dance community, right? And then I come to a point internally where, okay, I'm part of this amazing universe. The friendships, the beings that I am exchanging with, you know, it's in my mind, it's like, okay, but I'm not dating anybody. You know, I need other venues, you know, and so I had to start going to gay clubs, right? To perchance reenact a world like this there. And so there's these things that you carry forward, but then you also feel like you have to hold back or you have to leave behind in order to be in this space. And then you learn and onboard all the things that are there. And then I encountered public health through a friend who was working at the Minority Task Force on AIDS in Harlem. And he was like, there's a healthcare educator job. I just encountered him on Christopher Street. And I wasn't looking for work then, but the salary was like, oh, that's like a good chunk of change more than I'm making. Let me just go, you know? So then, you know, within 2 years, I'm director of education at Minority Task Force on AIDS. So that's where my formal onboarding into the part of the poetic movement that is truly chronicling queerness and HIV/AIDS and identity and all those things, as well as the ballroom community. So Everywhere Alien is centering all of those contrapositions, all of those moments of finding and losing and trying to hold on, trying to carry forward, trying to grieve while you're living. You know, it is that is Everywhere Alien. You know, so.
And I will say that the reconjuring and the restructuring of the worlds, the overlapping of the worlds and communities you're talking about was so impactful. It spread to the most like unlikely of places. The first writing workshop I ever had in New York was with Stacey Ann Chen at Casa Azul in Harlem before it closed. So those relationships that you all cultivated, like, brought so many more people into just the craft itself. And so it's like, has its own testament in, and I think in a lot of people's lives, and they'll come to it eventually, like you came to yours. So we have a 3-minute warning where we're gonna go a little bit over because I want you to read something, but I also have another question.
Okay.
So one thing that also came to mind when I was reading Everywhere Alien and the phrase Everywhere Alien, in my mind, I was thinking, you know, Everywhere Alien sounds like Eshu, sounds like Elewa, sounds like a praxis, right, for creation, because it always has the element of surprisingness. And if we think about that energy of Eshu or Elewa, what we're thinking about is a force that complicates the very act of making a choice. It's not the choices, it's how you make them, right? That becomes that essence. And there's this interdisciplinarity and this play that's related to that energy. And I wanted to ask you about that transformative aspect within your interdisciplinarity, but also like in Everywhere Alien itself, as it relates to like this energetic kind of force that messed up our camera earlier.
Once again, I'm going to answer as it comes to me. Everywhere Alien for me has felt like a force that I found, or that it was made for me to find and to discover, interrogate, embrace, embody what it is, what it could be. And but besides the concrete element of, you know, we're all intersectional beings and there's venues and praxis that invite parts of ourselves and inhibit others, and discovering what that could mean. I think part of what my learning of it has been is we live in a world that has disassociated from our common origin for whatever reasons, you know. So we, as a species, we woke up inside a being that the world has come to describe as a Black woman. And yet we have the phenomena of white supremacy that insists that somehow they didn't come from that, or that doesn't belong to who they are. And so I think one of the governing tensions is to situate yourself inside of Blackness for all the things that it could plausibly mean, but also sit it next to how does a civilization hold this? A civilization that is not just Black or doesn't necessarily understand itself to be Black. How do they hold it? Why, or how could they come to the knowing that they need to know it, just like I need to know it? That's my best answer right now.
Don't worry, when your next book comes out, we'll do it again. So as we close a little late, thank you to Ari, who is our Oz, for her patience. I want to hear Cyborg Heaven.
Yes. I'm almost there.
I almost read it.
Here we go. Okay. How might a poem ever be entered if one insists on living outside of it? As if truth ever estranges from its confession, shut off, attenuated, severed even, from the silence, hoping for a quiet burial of its secrets. Inside the belly of a thing is a body. Touch it. The crushed, fraught grape, the burst skin of an open chalice, the ferment lust routed towards its own becoming swallowed, a delectable and abusable thing. Plain as evidence how hickeys come first, leave secondhand, mapping in an instant the truancy of the desired and its bruised consequence. The possessed remind of their dispossession. The lover, the scorned, incite the tangled algorithms to their dangled non-local dance of the survived. Touch me here. COVID-19, 1980s come HIV 2020, unspell the undercount of the infected and the unbelieved. A mirror referees the chupacabra apart from its chimeric twin, still haunting the old AIDS mausoleum, toggling between pixel and time, betwixt Java and script. New worlds project into and out of the digital forest where screens scream now, as much for the troll as the corona, the drone, the android, the Teletubby, as much as the quarantined. Here in cyborg heaven, where we are all only fans of the fat, the femme, the nanosex, the trans, the zaddy, the cougar, the bear, the intersex and the polyamorous, the non-binary codes of the sapiosync and the bisexual algorithms of the marooned. Here, where apples and operating systems bear less and less fruit, more and more seed spill into isolate and heartache, pills pop, crystals smoke, the anxious and the paranoid into novel forms of forgiveness and the unforgiven. Everyone hides behind an Instagram scene. Pandemics push portals onto the outcast fringe of the human condition. Shame and stigma snag right where the shunned escape battered and bruised into their ennui underground. Every box signals a beginning of a turn, a twist, an impulse, a tremor, an anguish, a horned head, a taut arm, a wetted hand. Whistle the opened organ, call to task the hardening fruit of the willing and the wild. The object is to get inside, beside, beneath it, get into it, test how the right entrance can make as much noise as the entered. Touch, 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 touch it. Every crevice, every ending objects to nothing. Zoom in, magnify how salt pearl water exudes for you behind the glass, in front the screen, in opened ear. Don't it move you into your want? Emulsified, trigger, reflex, unfold before intent attends to any theory of mind. Touch, touch, touch me, please. I am it, and it is not me. Blood belongs and unbelongs to the viral, the virile, the vile, the live stream clings and unclings to the breathy contour of its own ecstatic perdition. Tunnels, tides, tubes swell their miasmas into the surrounded ear. Our insides bear the implicit need to be touched, to be held, to be nursed by the enveloped suck of hot tongue and recycled wind. Touch me, please. The box, the unboxed, the bruised, the belonged, the looked over, the overlooked, the puddle, the oasis, the pond, the breeding ground for the succumbed and the spawned, the required, the acquired, the healed, the traumatized, the fixed, the fixated, the errand boy, the homing pigeon, the prodigal, and the returned. We are what else besides a meeting ground? Heart, body, fluid, mind. Touch me, please. We're masked, nor rubber can withstand the cover of this blood-born anointing laced to my sins, my heart, my obsessions, my endeavors, my crimes, my longings received, endowed and pressed into beings like me. Touch me, please. The infected, affected, the unadorned, and the adored. Here, every transgression belies the confectioned underbelly to every sacral push and insists we hold on and hold out for something, anything holy, warmed, and divine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for everybody who stuck with us and who's still with us now. I can't wait to buy it when it comes out. What's the date?
Summer 2024.
Summer 2024. Put it on your reading list, set a calendar reminder, and keep a lookout. We're so honored to have you. And we're going to say goodnight to everybody now. And we gave you an early taste, so now you have to wait.